I've got several people that work for me, Todd, Mitchell, and Zach, but technically we all kind of work together as a team. We're pretty level and flat, I think, as an organization, so that that anybody can call me or have any questions in the field. Just feel free to reach out to me with any questions or problems that you're running into. If I don't know the answer, I'm going to tell you I don't know the answer, and I'll try to help you find it. The engineering team is here to support you guys, and we're here to guide everybody through the commissioning process of substations and relays and RTUs and control circuits. I know a lot of you guys do a lot of heavier equipment testing, breakers and transformers and reclosers and cables, switchgear that we don't, that as engineers we don't necessarily get into. So, the big thing that I learned, I said this last week, and I've been here for 6 years, and I spent almost 20 years at a utility at RG&E, and I've learned more about commissioning and testing equipment coming here than I ever did in the 20 years that I spent at a utility. So there's a lot of things that you guys see and do every day that as engineers I don't get to see and encounter. So one of the big purposes of this meeting or of this session is number one of sharing of good and best practices. So if you've got, we're going to talk about commissioning control circuits. We're going to talk about substation construction. We're going to talk about AC and DC circuits. But what I want is I got participation last time, but what I want to make sure is, if you've got an idea on how to do something, bring it up and let's talk about it. Alan Myers had some really good ideas last week that we talked through how to commission a DC circuit, and he had some really good ideas on different ways of doing it that I hadn't even thought of. So I know you guys have encountered things that I haven't, and I know you guys have got experiences that other people don't have, and that the purpose here is to share things. And we're gonna, at the end of the the AC DC circuit presentations, we're gonna show things that different people have found in the field and seen in the field, and need to be shared. I mean, there's things that again, as engineers, that we just don't know or don't realize is wrong. And a lot of times we're out there responsible for saying everything's tested, everything looks good, it's okay to energize. And if you looked at some of these things that you guys have found in the field, come across during maintenance, not commissioning, but maintenance, some things should have never been energized. Clearly there were problems, but as engineers, I looked at the picture and they showed it to me, and I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with it. But after you can see the failures. It's easy to explain what the failures were, but without having that experience of seeing something fail, it's hard to predict and see that the installation is incorrect. All right. So sharing of ideas and sharing of experiences is like the number one thing that I want to get across to you guys today, is that we need to be doing that. I want to see it done today. So that's the number one thing I want to make sure I get across. I want to try to create consistency of commissioning methods, and mainly with AC and DC circuits. When you get into DC circuits, there's a lot of different ways of doing it, and I don't want to say any way is wrong. There are good ways, there are better ways, and there are a couple wrong things to do, and we'll talk about those wrong things. But I want to try to create some consistency and consistency of how we're commissioning the DC circuits. And again, sharing of knowledge, sharing of experiences, and like I said, I know there's things out here that you guys have seen that I haven't, and have experiences that other people in this room don't have. But before we start, I do want to go around the room. I don't know if everybody knows everybody. I'll tell you right off the bat, I'm horrible with names. I mean, I've worked with most all of you in the field at one point or another, but I don't know everybody. So I'm going to have Zach just say, your name and what group you work for. All right.
I'm Zach Peters. I'm a new TAG electrical engineer.
Mitchell Staskevich, also with TAG as an engineer.
And just real quick, I'm sorry, Jeff. These guys are both out of Lancaster, so just say what division you're in, or region you're in, right?
Jeff Hammond, technician out of Syracuse. Most of you, but there's a few I don't.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Jesse Sobosinski, Tech Division out of Buffalo for the Buffalo Sewer Maintenance.
Scott Reister, test technician out of Victor.
Tim Bruno, Tech Division out of 237.
Brad Hartford out of Rochester.
Mike McIntyre out of Lancaster.
Chad Anderson out of Buffalo.
Sure.
Tom Ennis, TAG electrical engineer out of Victor.
I'm Landon. I'm the project coordinator at Vic. I was thinking of something else and I was wrong. He didn't finish my sentence.
Tyler Vanderbilt, technical services, Victor.
Christian Kolmanecki, Syracuse, test technician.
Aaron Arnold out of Buffalo, Tech Division. Rich McHugh, I'm out of Victor office. Jeff Wassian, technical services out of Lancaster. Mike Dervis, Buffalo.
Jason Koziak, technician out of Buffalo.
Sean Lilly, Syracuse Tech.
Winter Blackwire, Syracuse Tech.
Dan Tice, Syracuse Tech.
Great. I'm sorry, I didn't hear your name.
Sean Lilly.
Sean. Okay, nice to meet you, Sean. Sean and Christian, you're the two newest that I know of, right, at this point?
Correct.
Okay. Where do you, if you don't mind me asking, where are you guys from, or were you with O'Connell prior, or?
Kind of with the construction division.
Okay.
Joined TAG about 3 months ago.
Okay. Good. And
I did construction for 8 years with O'Connell, and then I went to National Grid Substation
oh,
and HMT for 3 years.
okay. Welcome aboard then. All right. So everybody has a handout, and what this is just all these drawings are in the slides, and it's just easier to see them up close than it is to try to see them on this board. But we'll follow along through them as we go. So topics we're going to cover, first one is going to be the distinction between brownfield stations versus greenfield stations. We're going to cover point-to-point drawings versus non-point-to-point drawings, DC circuit commissioning, AC circuit commissioning. I think I said before, cable terminations at pad mount transformers. This is where we get into the shared experience, things that people have found in the field, right? Shared experiences are going to go through this whole thing. And then the incident at Big Tree where they're energizing pad mount transformers with single phase switching. We're going to talk a little bit about that. I did expand this slideshow from last week, for those of you guys who were here last week, to include more stuff on cable terminations, just because of because people had more examples of things that they found in the field, of problems that they've encountered. But the big one, well, not the big one, the first one I want to talk about is brownfield versus greenfield, what the term means, and how do you approach a job that's brownfield versus greenfield. All right. So I guess my first question is does everybody know what those two terms mean? Okay. So when you go to Buffalo Sewer, and they ask you to, I don't know, rack out a breaker or wire in a control circuit, like we're doing with the relay replacement at Buffalo Sewer, right? That is a brownfield station. Brownfield means that you better have drawings, number one. You better have an isolated work area, because what you're touching or what you're removing or wiring can affect in-service equipment. You have to, you have the ability with what you're doing to trip customers. All right, that's what I call a brownfield station. You want to be very careful with it. You don't want to be, you want to know exactly where, you want to know exactly where your markup areas are. You want to know exactly how, whatever you're working on, where the DC is coming from, or where the AC is coming from. You want to prove it's energized. You want to put a lockout tag out on it. You want to be very careful with it. A greenfield station is a, just like it says, it's a greenfield station. They're putting shovels in the ground, and there's no customers connected, there's no transmission lines connected, there's no distribution lines connected. You could have house service. We talked about this last week. You could have a house service there, and you have to be careful about that house service. But technically, it's not a brownfield station, unless, of course, taking out that house service takes out, the rest of the street or something like that. But a greenfield station, you don't, I don't want to say you don't have to be careful, but you have a lot less risk of tripping anything inadvertently. You can apply DC circuit, DC voltages to things, and there can be, you'll find a mistake. You can find a mistake, but you don't have to worry as much about, am I going to trip somebody out? All right, that's, generally that's the definition between brownfield and greenfield stations. So what I want to talk about, and this is your first handout, and this is something I didn't say before, but I did talk about last week. My goal in this class, in this class and in my whole job is I want to retire at some point. And I need to make sure that all the knowledge that I have, or all the experience that I have, gets passed on to you guys or gets shared, all right? Because I can't, I'm not going to be here forever, right? So my goal is to get you guys up to the level of a lead person, and that should be your goals too, is to be a lead person, that you can run a job, that someone hands you a set of drawings and says, all right, you've got these 5 guys, this is what, I need you to go out and run this job, I need you to go out and create the isolated work area, I need you to figure out the sequence of how to do the job, I need you to figure out who you need, when you need them, and be able to execute the work. And to that goal, you guys need to know how to approach jobs, and a lot of what I may be discussing, maybe some of you guys, or a lot of you guys already have this experience. I know Jeff and Rich have this experience. I know Dan Tice has this experience. You guys have run jobs. You guys have seen this stuff. But I think it's worthwhile going through this, all right? And this particular job was an RG&E job I want to talk about, and this was a brownfield station, and our job was to replace all of these breakers, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 breakers. There's relaying work to be done, and the RG&E came to us and said, we need you to replace all these breakers, we need you to gear up, and we need you to put together a work plan on how you're going to do this. And the first question we ask is well, what's the first question I ask myself? What's the easiest way to do this? Does anybody have any ideas how you would approach?
Shut the whole thing down.
Exactly. That is the easiest thing to do. Turn it into a brownfield station, or turn it into a greenfield station. You know, go to all these remote stations and open up the disconnects and just keep the house service on in this place, and then just ripping and tearing. You know, that'd be the easiest thing to do. The customer don't do that. The customer doesn't want that. All right, you've got this, and I'm going to go into detail on these RG&E drawings a little bit, just because I know them well, and you may not have had the experience to how to read their drawings. But up here at the top, usually at the top of the page, that's a 34 kV circuit coming in, and that is a source, right? It is a source, but because there's no line underneath that, like if you look down here and you see 609 circuit, there's an underscore and there's a 37 underneath it. That means that that's at RG&E, that's a sub-transmission line. But we'll call it a transmission line here, but that means that circuit goes to station 37 and it goes nowhere else. So at the other end of this line is another substation. This 734 doesn't have a line underneath it, doesn't say it's going to another station. So that tells me that's going to multiple stations. Or, for that matter, there could be customers hanging off of the end of that. I don't know. I don't remember, to be honest with you. So this is a transmission line. This 668 line has no number underneath it, no lines. So that tells me that that's a distribution circuit. It's going to customers' stations. Whoever's taking 11 kV, usually 11 kV circuits in Rochester feed larger businesses that have maybe one or two sources, and they'll have a throwover switchgear there. And maybe customers being fed from 668 and this circuit over here 545. They would never let you take both buses out at the same time or both circuits out at the same time. What else is interesting in here? There's a K&N down here. I don't know. Does anybody know what that means? On 609 circuit?
Parallel circuits?
It's parallel circuits, yeah. It's a multi-conductor transmission line. So there'll be 3 Ks and 3 Ns. It helps when they go to, if you see K&N, you also know that it's underground. So underground cables, when they go to chase out a fault on a cable, in the manholes that they go to, they should all be labeled 609K or 609N, and then they can separate them at the station if there's a fault and bang each cable individually to figure out where the fault is. What else do we got here? We've got a couple transformers, breakers that feed 4 kV buses. So, there's a mixture of 4 kV and 34 kV, 4 kV, 11 kV, and 34 kV here. So there's a tie breaker, this 11 kV tie breaker. So there's a little bit of everything. There's transmission, there's tie breakers, there's 4 kV, there's transformers. So number one, they said, no, you can't take the whole station out. So, the big risk is dropping customers, right? They don't want us to drop customers. They don't want any outages. But if we can't take multiple breakers out at the same time, and we're required to only work on one breaker at a time, the question I have is, what is the risks of doing one versus the other? And I think I've said enough times, it's customer outages, right? They're not going to let you don't want to take the whole station out because we're going to lose customers, so it's easier. It's better to take one circuit out at a time. Like I said, like this 668, if it's feeding multiple customers, they'll figure out a way to tie a circuit over to refeed those customers. That's their planning group or their transmission operators will figure that out for us. But ultimately we had one breaker at a time. So we have one breaker allowed to do at a time. What's the first breaker we should go after? And I'm asking you this, guys, because I want you to think like you're a month away from doing this job. So I want you to think about how do we plan this job? What do we go after? Should we do first?
668.
668. That's a good choice. As a matter of fact, that is the first breaker we did. Tyler, why do you think 668?
Just the farthest away, it seems like it would least, it has the least effect on anything else. There's no underscore under it. It's not multiple feeds.
Right.
It's all the way at the end of the line.
Right. That is the first breaker we went after. And I'll explain. I'll start to explain why we did that. Now, why? Well, let me explain that a little bit. Let me do. This is what it's supposed to look like in the end. All right. Like you said, 668 was the first one that we went after. Any idea why we didn't go after the tiebreaker first? Did some guys, think about doing the tiebreaker first last time? And say that again.
You could kill the yard, you could dump both ways.
If you're not careful, yep, you could. When I'm planning out a job like this and figuring out where to start, the one thing I'm looking at is the control and protection and control circuits. And at RG&E, this is an old station, and the way that they built this station is I don't want to say cheap, but they cut corners when they built this station. And so I had to look at bus differential protection on this at this station carefully. What the hell? Is this childproof?
All right, here, we need a knife.
I don't have my gloves. All right, so
At least have PK blocks?
no, they didn't. And we'll talk about PK blocks too, now that you brought it up. That's a good point. And I guess I'll draw out like it's drawn. How many are there? 3 and a tiebreaker? All right, so number one, this station has bus differential protection. Most stations will. Like a 480 volt switchgear, distribution switchgear may not, probably doesn't have it, but anything, 4 kV, 11 kV, most all of it will have some kind of bus differential protection. And so when I say bus differential protection, does everybody know what that means? Okay. All right. So let me draw some CTs in here. So bus differential protection is just that. It protects the bus. All right. It protects this bus. There's a bus section 2 over here. That's what I've drawn over there. and there's a bus section 1. So there's 2 different bus differential protections. One that, and I'm going to draw it in over here, but it wraps, it protects from this CT here all the way through to this CT, this CT, this CT, and this CT. So anything within that zone of protection, it's called, is protected by the bus differential protection. All right, so there's a CT here, there's a CT here, 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 and here. And I'm going to put a polarity mark on each CT that is away from the zone of protection. That's and that's typically how you're going to always see the CT configurations for a bus differential. You may have the polarity mark on the other side, but the wire is going to come off the other side. All right. Now, all of these CTs, in this particular example, came to a summing circuit. All right, but it wasn't a PK block summing circuit. And it wasn't, and there were no test switches. So what Jeff is describing as a PK summing block is usually, if you go into a station, there's a box in a yard, in the center of the yard. The ideal way to design this was to put this box in the yard, in the center of the yard, and then you run all your CTs to this box. Right? All of them. And this one also, right? And then at the center of this, there's a summing point, and you come out with 3 wires into the control house, and you hit a relay, A phase, B phase, and C phase relays, and it goes to ground. All right, and you could go to this summing box, and there's something called a PK block, which I did not bring. I didn't think of bringing it, but you could pull it, and what it does is it shorts the CTs going out, and it allows you to work on that CT wiring without affecting the rest of the bus differential circuit. We didn't have that at this station. All right, Landon, we didn't grab an eraser.
Should be on the select marker.
There should be one where?
The black marker.
A roll of paper towels on.
Yeah. Yeah, let me grab a paper towel.
Do you have another packet too?
Here, let me